Hey, what's up guys? ThioJoe here, and you may have seen this week that Google actually made a big announcement in regards to their self-driving car project. They're actually spinning it off as its own company. Before, the whole self-driving car was under Google in their Moonshot program, which is basically different crazy technologies they try to create and just see what happens. But now the self-driving car project, I guess, was successful enough where they created their own company now called Waymo, which is going to be taking over that whole project as its own company, but still under the whole Alphabet umbrella company that really is Google at this point. And obviously the whole Google self-driving car project has come a long way. It started several years ago, and I think with this move, making it its own company, they're obviously thinking it's a big change. They called it an inflection point where they could be getting ready to make it go mainstream. So before, it was just kind of like a test project to see if they could do it. But now you see, as I mentioned in other videos, all sorts of other companies like Ford is trying to make their own fully autonomous self-driving cars. And actually, it was last year, Google had a major milestone. I believe it was in October. They had their first fully autonomous driving trip in Austin, Texas, where the car had no steering wheel, no pedals or anything, and it made its first trip on public roads. And it was actually pretty interesting because for this pilot test, they had a blind man in the ride. So obviously he couldn't control the car even if he wanted to, even if it had any controls. So it was just a good example about what these cars would be capable of and how useful they would be to people who might normally not be able to drive, whether they're blind or handicapped or impaired from a night of drinking or something like that. It would help out in so many different situations. And they have a new Waymo website you can go on. They kind of explain a little bit about what the project is. They have a little bit of a history of the project. They say that they've gone 1 billion miles per year in simulation miles. So I'm not really sure how that works. They have like a simulation where I guess they take sensor footage from real driving situations and kind of apply that and teach the computer how a human drives. And then they also have 2 million real life self-driving car miles where that information was actually applied, and they can kind of see how the car behaves in real life when it might not know exactly what to do. And with a human, you can do that critical thinking on the fly, make a decision, whereas the car has to have a lot of information because it only knows to do exactly what you tell it to. But if you can manage to make it learn, that's the big deal. And interestingly, I was kind of surprised by this actually, is Waymo said that they don't really intend to make their own cars. They said they're not trying to build better cars, but rather they plan to license out all the technology and the learning and software that they've created, and they want to license that out to automakers and trucking companies and that sort of thing. So instead of trying to have their own cars, they'd rather help other companies build theirs off of that and make the money that way. Which kind of makes sense because if you think about it, there's a lot less overhead if you don't have to actually manufacture physical cars and instead just focus on the software, because you can sell the software as much as you want and pretty much charge as much as you want without having any overhead at all. Whereas the car manufacturers, they probably know a lot more about car manufacturing process where Google doesn't, so they can save the money. It makes more sense for them to, instead of putting in all this software research to come up with their own self-driving car algorithms, they can just buy from Google, who is better at that. So like anything, the companies are going to be focusing on what they're good at and just buying the software and the licenses from other companies who are good at other stuff. And as I mentioned in one of my previous videos where I talked about what I think are going to be the big trends, I do think self-driving cars are going to see a big improvement. It's kind of like all the pieces are falling into place. We have Tesla releasing their more affordable cars with a lot of self-driving car capabilities, not necessarily just being self-driving in itself. Then Ford, like I mentioned several times, they want to release a fully self-driving car, I think within 5 to 6 years. And so a lot of companies are moving forward very fast, whereas 5 years ago, it would have been insane to think that this was going to happen so quickly. And of course, the benefits of having a self-driving car are too many to even consider, most of which would be the safety, because if you have all self-driving cars that can talk to each other, they're not really gonna get in a crash because they're predictable. Whereas a human, they might do something unexpected and the other people have to have that reaction time. Humans are slow, whereas if it was a self-driving car, they'd instantly know what was about to happen before a human would even know what's going on, so they can react to it before anything even happens at all. And also, if we get to the point where it's basically all self-driving cars, transportation would be way faster because you practically wouldn't even need traffic lights. You wouldn't really need speed limits because the cars would, again, know what every other car is doing. They can kind of synchronize going through traffic intersections without having to stop. And if they do have to stop, then they all accelerate at the same time. No nonsense based on human delay. And because self-driving cars, you would hope at that point, would be better at driving than a human, they could go physically faster even, because they can handle the response times required in going so fast. I mean, if you're going 100 miles an hour, if you take 1 second to respond to something, you've already gone really far still. Whereas a car, it's gonna take milliseconds to respond, so it'd be a lot better. On the flip side though, they're gonna face a lot of challenges because the biggest of which I can see is when self-driving cars are just starting to come out. It's not all self-driving cars, they're in the minority. Then, they're gonna have to deal with a lot of stupid people on the road. It's not gonna be all self-driving cars that are very predictable, so they'll probably have to be even better than what they would need to be later on. But I think that's good because then they learn from the best, or the worst, I guess you could say. So when they get to that point where it's all self-driving cars, it'll be a piece of cake. You'll really never have to worry about crashes, hopefully. I also kind of wonder about how they would handle truly unique situations that are very difficult to predict, like a detour where you have to go on a dirt road or something. Then how would the car even handle that? If they didn't program in dirt roads or like a very specific type of road or a driveway or something like that, where the human might be able to negotiate that, but a self-driving car has never seen anything like it before, I think they would really have to have some sort of manual control. I don't think we're almost ever gonna get rid of completely being able to control cars in some way. I think you're always gonna have pedals to override at some point, and maybe, manual cars will be a specialty item or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see how this whole Waymo company proceeds. I think this year is gonna be very exciting to watch because if even last year they were able to make a completely self-driving car trip, then they've obviously progressed since then, and in one more year, oh, it's gonna be insane. So I guess that's really all there is to talk about. Any further would be pure speculation, which, is fun to speculate, but we wanna keep this relatively informative, just general opinions based on what we actually have so far. If you guys do have any ideas though, I would be interested to hear them. Would you ever get in a self-driving car, or would you have to wait till they're like really safe before you'd even touch that? I'd be kind of nervous going 70 miles an hour in a car that I can't control at all. That would be a bit nerve-wracking. So we can talk about that down in the comments section below, of course. Also, I think today I'll plug my Instagram. I almost never talk about it, and I don't really post on there too often, so you're not gonna get spammed, but when I do post, I try to post interesting things, so go check that out if you didn't know I had Instagram. Also, if you guys did like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up. It helps out. It shows the YouTube algorithm that you like watching these videos and you'll keep seeing them. Also, if you want to keep watching, I'll put some videos here you can click on even if you're on a phone. Should be pretty interesting. I think you'll enjoy those. And if you want to subscribe, I make new videos 3 times a week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, so it should be worth it. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you guys again here on YouTube or on Instagram as well. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.